A father is the first male relationship in a woman's life, and based on that relationship, it can impact how she interacts and relates to other men from her teen years and beyond. Kevin Renner is a father of daughters and a journalist who wanted to examine the bond between fathers and daughters on his quest to become a better father. He interviewed 50 women from around the world and wrote about their stories in his new book, In Search of Fatherhood, a Mother Lode of Wisdom from the World of Daughterhood. We want to welcome you to the show, and thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
You went around and interviewed 50 different women, tough job, I'm sure,
yes,
for this book. What inspired that?
Well, I'm a father of 2 daughters, and I really hit a point in my life where I realized, you know, time is short. They've grown up so fast. They were 9 and 13 at the time. And I asked, what can I do in the years that we have left to be the best possible father for them? And so that was the motivation for it.
Wow. Now, in interviewing all these women, what were some big surprises? Were there cultural differences? I mean, what did you find?
There were a couple interesting surprises. One was how intent the women were in sharing their stories and how much those stories want to come up and come out. I had women volunteer to fly in from all over the country to tell their stories. So that was a big surprise. The second was that virtually every woman I spent time with, and we spent hours together, they all cried during the conversations.
I bet. I mean, and it's someone that you're so close to, too, because I remember, you know, growing up with my dad, and you know, some people are just close with their mom or just close with their dad, and I was really close with my mom, and dad was always dad, right? He worked and he came home, and you know, he came home at 5 and we cleaned up and all that, but it was later in life where I got really, really close with my dad. And so do you find that for a lot of women with their parents?
Yes, yes. I also found it interesting, there was a universal story of fathers and daughters that came through here. Again, I spoke with women from Africa, Asia, the Americas, Europe. The universal love story of fathers and daughters is that they are, daughters and sons too, are wired to want and to get the love of their parents. So one of 3 things happens. They either get that love, or they have that love and trust profoundly violated, or the interesting and complex stories are somewhere in between, where they get it and then they don't get it. So I call those 3 sections of the book the long straw, the short straw, and the long and the short of it.
Nice. Now, what are some lessons then that you found that you could share for dads out there that want to be close with their daughters?
Well, I think the first lesson is to have an appreciation for the fact that you're having an imprint on your daughter every day of her life, and to make a decision whether you want to give your daughter the long straw or something else. And hopefully fathers, to have that awareness, certainly want to give their daughters the best kind of parenting possible. You know, some of the lessons that came through were interesting, and they sound somewhat simplified, but tough love was an interesting thing I heard from women from all around the world, that women who had healthy relationships with their fathers never regretted the fathers who were firm and direct and who really laid down the law and held them accountable. So,
definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's a dad's job too. They do that because they're the one, you know, wait till your dad gets home, right?
Right.
And they tell you that. And also, you know, I think a lot of the lessons too that dads teach are to help their daughters be more independent and be more responsible. And I think they kind of guide them that way. My dad did that for me, and I know how appreciative I am of that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a real masculine energy that sons and daughters are wired to crave and internalize. And there are a lot of ways to get it, but the easiest way to get it is if there's a father in the relationship with the daughter.
Definitely. Did you, in interviewing all these women, did any of the daughters have regrets, like with how they had relationships with their dads?
Yes. Yeah. So I mentioned that there are sort of 3 archetypes, where the long straw, the short straw, and the long and the short of it. They have regrets for different reasons. The women who were in the short straw relationships obviously regret, you know, abuse and abandonment and those kinds of things that happened to them in childhood. The women who were in the long and the short of it had regrets because of the relationship that never fully came to fruition. And the women who had the long straw relationships had regrets that they didn't have more time with their fathers.
Oh, I bet. I
Yeah.
bet too. Or take advantage of it, you know, because I think a lot of kids too, I think with moms and dads too, you don't appreciate your parents as much until you're older in life and you look back on everything they did for you and you're like, oh my gosh, they're amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what
Yeah.
about, you know, you talked to a lot of the women and stuff, what were some of the most meaningful things they remember their dads doing for them?
This may surprise you. It certainly surprised me when I went into the question of what are the most memorable moments you have with your father. The answer I got consistently from women around the world from their 20s to their 80s was small things made the big difference. So, for example, a woman named Bergen, who grew up during the Depression in the United States, remembered so clearly her father taking her to parades or taking her out to the wood shop that he had built. And they'd spend the evenings just talking and hanging out while he worked. Other women talked about things as simple as, you know, I had this ritual with my dad where we'd go to McDonald's every Saturday morning. Or a woman named Denise, for example, remembered so fondly that her dad, whose second job was a garbage man, would take her out on the garbage truck every Saturday morning and they'd ride together. Just the imprint that those small things make was so extraordinary. There's an unconscious subtext to the communication which says, you're important, you matter, you're interesting, you're desirable.
Yeah, I mean, my dad fluffed my pillow every night before I went to sleep when I was a little girl. I couldn't sleep until he came in and fluffed the pillow for me. Now, I know that writing this has made you a better father, and obviously if you even wanted to do this subject matter, you're already a great father. Where can people find your book?
Oh, it's available certainly on my website at KevinRenner.com, and there are links there to all of the major book e-tailers, so Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Borders.
So pretty much everywhere.
Pretty much everywhere.
And you know what? This would be a great gift for Father's Day.
So far it has been.
There you go. Perfect
Yes.
in time for Father's Day. Thank you, Kevin, so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for
Made me have some
having
good
me.
memories of my dad, too. And I know he's watching right now, so
Well,
thank you.
I'm glad you drew the long straw.
Yes, yes, we did. All right. Thank you, Kevin.